All right, perfect timing. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the January meeting of the Tri-Valley Democrats. To start us off, we'll have the Pledge of Allegiance. If anyone would like to follow along, they may. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America
and to the republic for which
it
stands
one nation under God,
indivisible, with
and
liberty
justice
and justice for all.
All right, thank you all. So we have a very packed and exciting meeting today. So I want to get straight to it. But before that, it is, a special day that is, our remembrance of Martin Luther King Jr. I spent a lot of the day reading quotes from him and realized that I can do no justice to any of the things he said. He said them all much better than I will be able to. So I do just want to open this meeting with a moment of silence to just in honor of all the people who have died fighting for justice and equality, and all the people who are still suffering in the fight for justice and equality because it is not done. So I would ask everyone just to observe a moment of silence. Thank you. So with that, we have on our agenda today a couple of big items. So I will be posting a link to the agenda in just a second. So we have a couple of big items on the agenda. We're going to be going through a candidate forum and endorsement. So we'll be meeting with all of the candidates and we will be endorsing doing an endorsement vote at the end. We're then going to nominate our delegates to the pre-endorsement caucus, and then we're going to do a bylaws update. So a lot going on today. With all of that, I do want to go over just our endorsement process a little bit before I turn it over to, we have a special guest today for moderating the debate. But before I get to that, I just want to go over some of the rules of kind of our Tri-Valley Dem rules. So the Tri-Valley Dems bylaws state that we're able to endorse 0, 1, or all candidates, or any number of candidates in this race. So we'll be meeting with each of them at the end of it. We will be voting on who we would like to vote, who we would like to endorse. You'll have the option for each candidate on the ballot of voting yes or no or abstaining from each one. In order for a candidate to be endorsed, they need 60% yeses out of the yes no vote total. If a candidate gets 60%, as well as more than 6 votes, they will be endorsed by the club. It is, as I said, possible for multiple candidates to get endorsed in that way. Regardless, we are working to make sure that once endorsed, that we are going to be able to pledge support and do what we can to help the candidate to win their race. So we'll be working with our different committees to really see about getting volunteers and donations and trying to help out any candidates that we do endorse. There is, for this vote, we will be doing an online form. So the online form will ask you your votes as well as your name and email. The name and email is just for verification purposes. You do need to be a member of the club in order to vote. And so if you were a member in 2021, your membership is still up to date. It will expire at the end of the month, and we'll be having several more endorsement meetings coming up. So it is important that you renew your membership as soon as possible. But you will be able to vote today as long as you were a member in 2021, whether or not you have renewed yet. If you're eligible, the only reason for the name and email is to verify that you are an eligible voter in the club. The only person who will see that information, your personal information along with the votes, is our secretary, who is recording and tallying the votes and verifying them. After that, if there is some contention, I would be the only other one to verify the votes, but I'm not going to look at them unless there is an issue with the voting. assuming there is no issue, the secretary will scrub the names from the voting and will post the tallies so people can see those if anyone wants to verify where votes have gone. I hope this process works for everyone. We're trying to maintain the integrity of a secret ballot, as well as, making sure that we are able to verify in the online digital world. If there's any contention to the process, let me know now. All right. Hearing none, then I'm going to put in a link for those of you who are not up to date on your dues to pay your dues. So if you could please, renew. It is a new year, 2022, and dues for the 2022 year are due. So please, when you have a chance, make sure to pay those. I'll post the link again at the end of the meeting. And with that, I'm going to turn this meeting over to Kunal. He is one of our younger members who is going to be moderating the debate. I think it's important as a president to allow those of you who wish to step up an opportunity to, and he came to me, asked if he could moderate this debate. We did a little prep together, and I think he's going to do a great job. If anyone else ever wants, any of the responsibilities of the club or anything, to chip in more, I always welcome any additional help, and I'm here to share my seat with everyone as best as I can. I always appreciate empowering others to do their best. And so with that, take it away, Kunal.
Sure, thank you for that empowerment. I really do feel it. Hi, for everybody that doesn't know me, I'm Kunal, one of the younger members. Just recently turned 18 this past weekend, so finally can vote. That's good to hear. But I'm glad that we're bringing this election to the Tri-Valley Dems. It's an important one, as most elections are. The way that we're going to be moderating this debate is each candidate will have 5 minutes for their opening statement to discuss whatever, and it'll be in a random order. And then we'll proceed to a Q&A session where members of the Tri-Valley Dems are open to ask any question, and we'll cycle through and each candidate will have a chance to respond. I do warn, please keep your sound on mute and to let others speak so that nobody gets interrupted. We want everybody to have a fair shot to ask a question. And other than that, at the end, once the Q&A session is over, each candidate will be given an ending remark period. Any questions before we begin? Is everybody excited? Yes. Thank you for that. And with that, I will let, Mr. Kumagai begin with his opening remarks.
Yeah, thank you, Kunal, and good evening, Tri-Valley Democrats. It's great to be here with you all at my home Dem Club. Thank you to Evan for putting this together, and thank you to the Tri-Valley Dems for taking on this unique opportunity to be the first Democratic club to endorse this race. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Dublin Council Member Sean Kumagai. I'm a third-generation veteran, son of a first-generation Japanese immigrant, and the first openly LGBTQ elected official to serve in the Tri-Valley. I'm a trained instructional designer and workforce development professional. I've served over 20 years as an intelligence professional in the US Navy, and I currently work as the district director for Assemblymember Bauer Cahan. Many of you know my path to elected office, but may not have heard my backstory. When my parents got divorced when I was 11 years old, we loaded up a U-Haul and left the Bay Area to move to West Phoenix, where my mom grew up. My late grandfather, an Army veteran, had retired from the Arizona state government at the time, and he would come over every morning to cook us breakfast, pack our lunch, and drop us off at school. Through my grandparents' help, my mom went back to school and started her own career, all while being a single mom. And with a little help from government-backed student loans, food stamps, welfare payments, and with a whole lot of grit, my late mother got an education and started a career as a registered nurse. She went on to join the Army Nurse Corps and retired as a VA psych nurse. What my family's story instills in me is the value of service. Service to country, community, family, and to the people that sometimes need an extra boost. Our family's experience taught me the value of good governance. The government can and should be there to protect our most vulnerable and be a safety net for when people fall on tough times. That's what informs my politics, and that's why I've dedicated my life to government service. That's why I'm a lifelong Democrat. That's why I joined the Navy, and that's why when a seat opened up on the Dublin City Council in 2018, I decided to run. And with your help, I won. And on my time on council, we've been able to create nearly 1,000 middle-income housing units in Dublin and initiate 3 different affordable housing projects. We set a bold climate action plan that puts us ahead of our greenhouse gas emission reduction goals. We took on big tobacco by banning all flavored tobacco products, including vape, and we put in place one of the most progressive safe gun storage ordinances in the state. And we've done so much more. Now I'm running for assembly, and I know it's a serious commitment. Working alongside Rebecca in the assembly has taught me that firsthand. Every day, we work to serve 500,000 constituents on a variety of complex and nuanced issues. We balance their needs and set policy that not only affects them, but every one of our 40 million residents in the Golden State. It's a serious responsibility, and I decided to run because I believe I'm the person who is best equipped to do the most good for the most people of this district. I come ready loaded to get to work for the people of this district on day one. And I'll bring decades of experience working within the federal, state, and local government to get results for the East Bay. When elected to assembly, I aim to increase funding for our public education system to ensure that all of our students, including our veterans, have pathways to 21st century jobs. Education is the economic engine of this great state, and we need to invest more. I plan to take on the affordability crisis to ensure that everyone has the opportunity to achieve financial security. We need more housing across the spectrum, from market rate to subsidized affordable housing. I plan to revive our economy in a way that creates good paying jobs in the clean energy sector and critical infrastructure sector, and create pathways into critically understaffed professions in healthcare, tech, and education. I plan to protect our environment by providing resources to our local agencies to address water and air pollution and address climate change through investments in cutting edge technology. And I'm committed to meaningful criminal justice reform while keeping our communities safe from crime. I believe we can and must do both of these things simultaneously, and I don't think that they are mutually exclusive. Tri-Valley Dems, I'm ready to take on these and the many tough challenges that we're facing here in the East Bay and across this great state. I come ready loaded to get to work for the people of this district on day one, and I hope to be your partner in advancing a legislative agenda that works for the Tri-Valley and promotes our mutual democratic values. I look forward to this discussion and answering your questions. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much for that, Sean. Appreciate it. And we'll move to Ms. Ortega. You have the floor.
Thank you. Good evening, Democrats. So excited to be here tonight. It was the first time I heard Sean's story, so it's I love hearing about all of you. So a little bit about me, for those that don't know me, my name is Liz Ortega, and I'm currently the Executive Secretary Treasurer of the Alameda Labor Council, representing about 135,000 workers in Alameda County. But tonight I'm here as a candidate for Assembly District 20. And the reason that I'm running is the reason my parents brought me to this country when I was 3 years old. Like many immigrants, my mom crossed the border with myself and my little brother because she wanted a better life for herself and her children. And she came to meet my parents here in Oakland, which is where I grew up, in search for a good job, for a place to live, for her kids to be able to have a future. And a lot of those dreams that she came here for are going away slowly, and even more rapidly actually with COVID. And so having the experience of representing workers for over 20 years and having watched my parents work hard, buy a home, then lose a home through foreclosure, and my friends and kids either go to school or end up in jail, I decided that I wanted to represent Assembly District 20 and fight for these things that I have personally seen and experienced. So my priorities in this area would be job creation and healthcare. COVID has just laid out bare what we've all been fighting for as Democrats, and that is available, access to healthcare, making sure we're all healthy and how our kids are healthy and our families are healthy. And through this pandemic, we've realized that if we don't have our health, we don't have anything. The other thing I'm looking for is affordable housing. We have a crisis here in America with so many people ending homeless. It's an issue of not just being able to buy a home anymore. It's about being able to pay your rent. It's about being able to, having to work 2 or 3 jobs to be able to pay your rent. And then forget about buying a home because that's not even an option to many in our communities anymore. So I want to bring back that part of the American dream, that part that drove my parents here to this country. And great schools. As a mother, I went to Oakland Public Schools. My children went to San Leandro Public Schools. My daughter's there right now. My husband was a former school board member. I understand that we need to invest and really fight for quality education in today's California. And we're being one of the largest economic growers in the nation, the world. There's no reason our children should be last in education. We need to go back and we need to really invest in our students and in our future. And that's why I'm asking for your support tonight. And that's why I think I am equipped to do the job on day one. In addition to all of this, I've also spent time in Sacramento as a former labor lobbyist for AFSCME, where I've actually spent time in the middle of the night inside the Capitol, fighting for the workers that I represent, making sure that the budget that's being discussed and the questions that are being asked are reflective of the communities that I represent. And that's where I learned that if people like myself are not inside those halls in the middle of the night, doing the work that needs to get done, then we get left behind. And that's why I'm here tonight. That's why I've also earned the endorsement of Assemblymember Quirk, and respect him tremendously in all the things that he's done for this community. I've also just received the California Teachers Association endorsement, AFSCME, the Teamsters, because they know why my work is not just a talking point, it's not just a bullet point, it's who I am as a person, and it's what I've delivered for the last 20 years. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much for that. And we will end our opening remarks with Jennifer. You have the floor. I also remind anybody who wants to ask a question for the Q&A period to please raise your hands or put the questions in the chat.
Thanks, Kunal. Good evening. It's a privilege and an honor to be here with the Tri-Valley Dems tonight at this time of remembrance. We remember Martin Luther King Jr. for being a fierce freedom fighter. He said, "There comes a time when one must take a position that is neither safe, nor politic, nor popular, but he must take it because conscience tells him it is right." When I was a child growing up in New Orleans, Louisiana, I was often told to be seen and not heard. But I know that I can no longer be silent, not after working in a place where people seek care in handcuffs and living in a place where my neighbors are dying and getting sick. Another fierce fighter, the late Bell Hooks, said, "To speak as an act of resistance is quite different than ordinary talk." So I started this campaign in July, running to serve my community, because in order to pass legislative priorities for working people, we must have more than a person who votes the right way. We must have champions that will organize to move our Democratic supermajority to pass policies that benefit all of us, policies that strengthen housing, healthcare, education, and justice. My campaign is grounded on these core tenets. As a nurse, I see healthcare and education as interconnected. To have healthy educational institutions, we need healthy faculty, students, and families. We all want the same thing, to know our children are safe and thriving and to be able to go to the doctor and walk out without having a bill. We must have nuanced, localized housing policy with a regional focus that includes workforce and transit-oriented housing today. Housing that allows all of us to live and work in the same community. We must have transit infrastructure that is constructed and operated with accessibility in mind. It has to be close to housing, multimodal and accessible from the first mile to the last mile, on foot, by bicycle, and by bus. Commutes that extend for hours are unsafe, untenable, hard on mental health, and bad for our environment. When we put justice and health together, we all live better lives. This has been my work as trustee for the Alameda Health System, where I serve as chair of the Finance Committee that is responsible for managing $1 billion budget in these uncertain times. In this role, I also work to implement public health policy and maintain standards for our 4 hospitals and the work of thousands of nurses, doctors, and other healthcare providers. I haven't always been a nurse though, or a trustee. In 2007, I actually lost everything during the financial crisis that rocked the world. In similar ways that the COVID created economic crisis we are currently in is decimating families. I found myself facing foreclosure and filing for bankruptcy. I was a single mom and my kids were 3 and 7 at the time. We were facing imminent homelessness. Fortunately, I was able to put myself through nursing school, a 1-year accelerated program at Samuel Merritt University, and afterward I got a job at San Francisco General Hospital, where I worked in the psychiatric emergency room. It was amazing to work there, and it was also very stressful. Every door has a lock that requires a key, including the bathroom. Patients were usually brought in wearing handcuffs. Sometimes all they wanted was a medication refill, but they found themselves calling 911 to get care with us because the clinic wait list was too long, or they didn't know that any other option existed. I learned then that our behavioral health system was unable to meet our clients' basic needs. When COVID hit, my small unincorporated community of Ashland was hit hard. We had the most death and infection among people of color than any other town in this district. That was a difficult reality to face, knowing that my neighbors were getting sick and dying, and then seeing what happened to George Floyd. I realized that as a nurse, as a Black woman raising 2 Black sons, and as a person with the ability to advocate for change, I have a duty to do so. My name is Jennifer Esteen, registered nurse, health system trustee, Eden Mack councilwoman, and vice president of organizing for SEIU 1021. I am here in service, and I ask for your sole endorsement of me for the California State Assembly here in Assembly District 20. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, candidates, for those opening remarks. I think it only makes sense. I see Ellis has his hand raised. I guess we'll begin with Ellis's question for you 3. I think you're on mute.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Keneal, and thank you all of the candidates. We're seeing a combination of things concerning crime. We saw the smash and grabs in Walnut Creek and a number of other places. And but we have an outbreak of that kind of crime. But on the other hand, as Jennifer just mentioned, there's George Floyd and the entire Black Lives Matter movement. And it seems like these are counterbalancing somewhat difficult decisions to make. How do you balance crime prevention and racism within the various police forces and enforcement agencies throughout the state? That's my question for all of the candidates.
Perfect. I think we'll start with Miss Ortega as a response. It's going to be random every time.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I think Sean said it at the beginning, which is people want to feel safe, but we also don't want to get killed and murdered. And so there has to be a balance. And I believe that law enforcement needs to be reimagined at every single level, from the district attorney's office to the sheriff's office to local police departments. I would promote legislation that would support partnerships between public health, community-based organizations, and law enforcement to redirect resources away from incarceration and into mental health and education. As Jennifer mentioned, we shouldn't have people with handcuffs. They have to go take into the restroom and then led to Santa Rita. It shouldn't be that way. Our kids should have a direct pathway to higher education, not just into the criminal justice system. So in order to do that, we really need to look at the criminal behavior as a comprehensive issue with community-based management and navigation services that meet the needs of the individuals. We need to invest in restorative practices, and we need to change the way we look at criminalization. And that's what I would do.
Great, thank you. Next, Jennifer.
Thank you so much for the question. You know, crime and criminal justice are one way to look at some things. I think often we see crimes of poverty and hear about criminal actions that are sensationalized, and it becomes the narrative that we all live by. But when we look at the statistics that are actually impacting our cities and communities these days, those are isolated incidents. And unfortunately, those isolated incidents become perception. I think that what we need to do is really focus on making sure communities have services so that crimes of poverty diminish. Our educational system has not been fully funded for quite some decades since the passage of Prop 13. And last year we saw that we attempted to reform the tax system to fully invest in our public educational system, which can help to give people opportunities for workforce development, which basically means people get jobs. When people have jobs, crime diminishes. We have seen violent crime statistics decreasing year after year after year. And we have to continue that trend by investing in our communities. As a psychiatric registered nurse, as I said, I've seen too many people have interactions with the police. And we know that when police get involved in issues that are non-violent, sometimes they turn into sad crises, moments where people lose their lives and their dignity unnecessarily. And when we properly invest in our healthcare system and our behavioral health system with measures like 988 that Assemblywoman Bauer Kahan has been proposing and trying to get passed, we will see that these unnecessary contacts will diminish.
Great, thank you so much for that response. And lastly, Sean, you're up.
Thank you, Kunal. Yeah, as I mentioned at the head, I don't think these are mutually exclusive things. We need to both continue to work on criminal justice reform while we're also addressing serious public safety concerns that we have in our communities. I'm very proud of the work that we've been doing in the state legislature over the past couple of years to put in place the most progressive criminal justice reforms in the country. We have now the most progressive use of force definition in the country. We just passed a police decertification bill. We banned the chokehold. All of that work needs to be done to reform policing. There are certainly bad actors, just as there's bad actors within the military, there's bad actors within law enforcement. And I think law enforcement wants to work with us to ensure that bad actors and bad departments can be addressed and we can make meaningful reforms. But at the same time, we need to ensure that we have safe communities. I deal every day and I'm working on this issue with my constituents, whether they be in Rebecca's office or as a city council member. People are scared. They're fed up. They're fed up with the organized retail theft and catalytic converter thefts and getting their car broken into and the home invasions and the hate crimes. There are serious crimes being committed, and unfortunately, our law enforcement is inundated with responding to mental health crises and this problem that we have within plaguing our communities, that is substance abuse. So we have a chronically underfunded system that has not been providing care for these folks, and our police are constantly being diverted to address that. I believe that we can put in smart, technology-enabled, data-driven solutions for our law enforcement that will free them up to go after the most egregious crimes. In Dublin, we've done just that. We've put in situational cameras and automatic license plate readers. We have technology-enabled law enforcement that is really a force multiplier within our community. That frees up police to do their job. I understand that these kind of technological solutions have certain privacy concerns, but as someone who's worked in intelligence my entire life, I can tell you, you can put technology in place and put proper oversights and policies so that you can protect people's privacy while still keeping us safe. That's what I would propose to do if I'm your assembly member, and I look forward to doing that work.
Great. Thank you so much for the response. I'm going to now paste a question that was put in the chat earlier for the candidates. I'm also going to read it out loud. It says, I would like candidate perspectives on possible state expansion of Medicare and Medi-Cal being considered by the legislator currently. And I will open it up to start with Jennifer.
I feel so lucky that you asked me first. I'm a staunch supporter of Medicare for All and very thrilled to see that AB 1400 is moving through the legislature at a rapid clip this month. I know that on Friday it's going to an appropriations committee, and I hope that we see a yes vote because we need universal health care for every single person in this state, as we need universal health care for everyone in the nation. This is the fifth largest, California is the fifth largest economy in the world. We are home to more than 179 billionaires. And over the course of this pandemic, 10 people in this country have gotten richer to the tune of $3 trillion. Those are big numbers with big zeros. The bottom line is we're dealing with COVID. It's an issue of resources. People are dying every day and getting sick. Our schools cannot stay open because teachers are afraid that they will either get sick themselves from the student body or students will get sick from the teachers, and people will be continuing to infect their families and friends unnecessarily. And the reason for the fear is because there is a lack of basic resources like N95 masks, like safe ventilation systems. In a state as wealthy as ours, no one should fear these basics being unavailable. And I think all the other chatter we hear about who's angry at who's fighting for what, whether there are rights, whether it's a sick out, whether it's a strike, all of that is a distraction. We deserve to be safe. Healthcare workers have been 3 times as likely to get sick. And over the last 2 years, we have seen 20% of the field of workers drop out of the workforce in healthcare. We already had not enough staff to keep our hospitals fully functional. And now we are struggling. At the Alameda Health System, we are spending more than 250% of our budget on registry, travel nurses to keep our health system running every single day. That's expensive. That's going to cost the county more than we anticipated. And it's because we have not prepared for where we are at. It's because we need more resources to make sure we can have permanent staff and permanent resources. We can do this. I trust that we will have a yes vote on Friday in the Appropriations Committee because we have to have universal health care today.
Great. Thank you so much for that response. Now, Sean, you're up.
Yeah, this is a very important question. And for those of you who are not following the debate, I encourage you to take a look at the conversations that are happening in the legislature right now. AB 1400 was brought forward last year. And, with a little bit of retooling, we're continuing to do that work this year. I commend Assemblymember Wicks and the other co-authors for bringing forward this very bold vision for a single payer healthcare system. This is a tremendously complicated and nuanced policy that has a lot of stakeholders. And they're going to be having some very detailed conversations about how we make that a reality. I absolutely support us moving towards universal healthcare coverage for everyone, and not just any healthcare coverage. We need to increase the quality of healthcare across the board in this state. It's going to be a tough fight. I'm not going to lie to you. I would not be surprised at all if this is up next year in 2023 when one of us is sworn in as your assembly member. And I look forward to continuing to have those conversations with my colleagues in the assembly about how we're going to actually move in this direction. I think it's been very positive what the governor has done in recent years to expand coverage in Medi-Cal to seniors and to undocumented immigrants. It's absolutely a step in the right direction. But don't be mistaken, this is going to be a very difficult long haul, and it's going to take a lot of money, and it's going to take some very tough conversations about our taxation system, and it's going to be politically difficult. So I look forward to being your partner in realizing some of these goals in the coming years, and I promise you I will make that one of my priorities.
Perfect. Thank you for that response. And lastly, Ms. Ortega.
I absolutely unequivocally support universal healthcare. And I agree that it's going to be a very difficult conversation. It's going to be it's a conversation that's been happening for decades now. And I, for one, am ready for that fight because I've been doing it for since I can remember, going to the hospital as a 3 or 4 year old when I learned to speak English to translate for my parents at the doctor's office, like many other immigrant children, because that access wasn't there. And I know one thing, I know that maybe it won't pass, but I do know that many of us are going to need the doctor soon. And when you talk about inequality, and when you talk about our current situation with COVID, we also know there's going to be a lot of healthcare costs for Californians. And that's why we need universal healthcare. That's why we need to fight for it. The same reason we fought for civil rights, the same reason we fought for equal marriage. With COVID, we for years I've heard, we couldn't get paid sick leave. Workers just had to deal with it. They had to go to work whether they were sick or not. And all of a sudden now we realize, oh, we can give paid sick leave because we're telling workers to stay home. They don't know if they're going to get sick, but they know they got to pay the bills. And now we've been able to figure out a way. Is it perfect? No. But is it a way forward? Absolutely. And it's time for us to take on the fight and fight the big associations and corporations that are used to getting their way because they're used to putting the money in their pockets. And that's why we have 10 of the richest people in this world dominating all of our healthcare systems while the rest of us suffer and don't know literally if we're going to live or die if we go to work the next day. And that's why I absolutely unequivocally will fight for this legislation today, tomorrow. And if it doesn't get passed, when I get elected, that will be one of the first things that I move on. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your response. I'm now going to let Pleasanton City Council Member Valerie Arkin ask a question.
Thank you so much. And thank you to all the candidates who are here tonight. Appreciate hearing from all of you. My question is kind of a three-parter, but How do you feel about Senate Bill 9 and 10 and the loss of local control with housing decisions? And following that is, what are your solutions to address the affordable housing crisis? And lastly, are you accepting developer contributions?
Great. That's a three-part question. We will begin with Sean Kumkai.
So Kunal, what do we have, about 30 minutes to answer this question? Because that's pretty meaty. I'll try to keep it as brief as possible.
You got
You all
2
know this-
minutes, Sean. Kidding.
Okay, all right. You all know this is a passion of mine. I'm happy to chat with any of you if you want to talk housing policy for an hour. You know, I ran for city council because as a veteran, when I moved to Dublin to go work at Camp Parks, I could barely afford to find a place to live. Housing affordability is a real issue, and it's not just impacting the lowest income, it's impacting all of us. In Dublin, there was a recent study, over 40% of people are severely housing burdened. This is a problem. We have grossly underproduced for years. Now, you know, what do I think about SB 9 and SB 10? Well, one, they're the law now. SB 9 seeks to rezone single family homes by creating lot splitting. There are a lot of protections in place to address some of the concerns that some local community members had around doing that. And there was a good study put out by Turner Center that said that this is not really going to create that much housing, but it's going to create a little bit of housing in some areas where we could do lot splitting. SB 10, I don't really understand what the opposition is to it. It is a local control bill. SB 10 gives rezoning authority with CEQA exemption to localities, and they can opt to do it or they cannot. So these are very innovative ways to create modest increases in housing. I don't think they're really the boogeymen that people make them out to be, but we are going to need to do more work. And it is true that just creating more market rate housing, just doing the rezoning work is not going to be enough. We have got to put more resources into the affordable housing system than ever before. And that means giving money to localities so that they can do the work themselves. We've also have to make sure that, so affordable housing, capital A, affordable housing that is done by nonprofit developers or localities, is the funding for it is exceedingly complicated. So we need to reform the funding streams for affordable housing. And finally, there's a big conversation going on in Sacramento right now called social housing. Do we invest money as a state for the state to go in and buy affordable housing or buy mixed income housing projects or develop those? I think that's a very interesting question, and I think it's part of the mix. But I'm very proud of the work that we've done in Dublin to create affordable housing, both subsidized and affordable by design. And like I said, we just approved 1,000 existing units in our middle income housing program. And that's going to have a real impact in people's lives. So that's it in a nutshell. I'm happy to answer any more questions about housing policy.
Great. Thank you for keeping it less than 30 minutes. I will let Ms. Ortega respond next.
Thank you. So yeah, I mean, it, like Sean said, it's the law. But I also believe that within the law, there's collaboration and needing to work with our elected officials. And we need to acknowledge that there is a housing crisis. In order to meet the demands that are currently happening right now, we would need to build 3.5 million new homes. So we're gonna have to figure out a way to work together to make this happen, both at the state level and at the regional level. Affordable housing isn't something that's just a issue that's, you know, for those who are homeless. It's really happening to all of us. A lot of us are having to work 2-3 jobs to pay the rent. So it's not just about, you know, finding a home to live or buying a home. It's about being able to stay where you are now and how the rents are increasing. So we definitely need to figure out a way to support development, but also work together to make sure that we keep in mind, you know, the communities we live in and the kind of development we want to see. I also believe we need to work together to increase access to affordable housing and expanding family shelters and transitional housing for our youth, and increasing our mental health programs to address some of the homelessness that's happening in our communities. Thank you.
Thank you for that response. And lastly, Jennifer.
All right, thank you so much. So I'm gonna answer the question I haven't heard answered yet, which is no. I'm not accepting developer contributions or any corporate contributions at all. I'm a grassroots candidate that is running with money from individual people only, because I expect to be held accountable to people, not corporations, not real estate developers, definitely not oil and gas companies. I think that we are suffering from a crisis of affordability in this country, in this state, and especially here in 80/20. As we heard Sean say, 40% of Dublin is housing overburden. That means 40% of people who live in Dublin can't afford the rent or at risk of being out of their home at any given moment. In the unincorporated area where I live, 50% of us are renters. There's 140,000 people that live in unincorporated here in 80/20. And if that was one city, guys, let me tell you, 140,000 people would be the 4th largest city in all of Alameda County. That's a lot of folks. Half are renters. And because we're in unincorporated, we don't have any rent protections unless it is passed by the Board of Supervisors or by the state. So I plan to make sure that we have firm rent protections for every single person that lives in the state and that lives in unincorporated communities all over our state, which totals 6 million people altogether. I'm gonna give you another fact about unincorporated. Over the last 10 years, rents have gone up 65%. I don't know about you guys, but I don't know many people whose wages have gone up 65% in the last 10 years. So folks are really struggling. They're being displaced as we speak. It is a crisis. SB 9 and 10, I like what you said, Sean, it is modest. It also doesn't impact affordability. Market rate housing is good, but it is not good enough for all of us, because market rate housing means housing that only rich people can afford. In order to have housing that is deeply affordable, realistically affordable for the majority of us, we have to invest in mixed income housing right now in order for us to get back to communities that are whole, healthy, and home to people of all types. I'm looking at this Zoom right now, and I gotta say, it's beautiful to see all the faces, all the hues, all the shades, 3 candidates that are people of color in this district that is majority people of color. We have to have mixed income housing, because that is how we will address housing affordability. That is a good beginning, and it is something that everyone can get access to. Also, I want to see vacancies be so expensive that it's cheaper to house people. We have to have a statewide database of all rental units so that we can track when people have vacancies for more than 3 months, more than 6 months, more than a year. We know that in certain cities and towns around this state, we have more vacant units today than we have homeless people. So when we make vacancies more expensive than keeping people on the street, we will eliminate homelessness instantly. That's what I'm going to do when I become your assembly representative. And that's what I'm going to do to make sure that California can house everyone.
Thank you so much for your response, candidates. Before I call on Marisol to ask a question, I would like to remind the candidates to keep the responses within 2 minutes, even though it's a multi-part question. And for the folks asking the questions, to keep the questions brief, because there are a lot of great questions in the chat I also want to ask. Other than that, it's great to see you, Marisol. You have the floor.
Likewise, thank you so much. So for each candidate, I'd like to ask you, do you consider yourself a progressive? If so, what specific progressive issues have you supported and personally and successfully advanced?
Great, thank you so much. Jennifer, you can begin.
I would say that I consider myself hella left. And the reason I said is because I think the word progressive gets a little watered down. It means a lot of things to a lot of people, and I don't want to get caught up in labels. What I try to promote that is incredibly progressive is workers' rights. I don't know anybody who's independently wealthy. All of us have to work. And even the people who, might be like 3 or 4 degrees of separation who have money still do some kind of work every single day. So I believe that people who go to work deserve to work in a dignified manner. They deserve to have rights and benefits at work. And frankly, people deserve the ability to sit with their employers and have equal footing. Where I'm from in Louisiana, which is a right to work state, we didn't always have that. When I got to California and I became a union member, suddenly I had the opportunity to talk to my boss and say, no, actually, I don't think that's fair. I think this is fair. Actually, I have a contract that says this is how we work. That was revolutionary to me. And I want to see every single worker in this state have access to bargaining rights and have been fighting for that as vice president of organizing for SEIU 1021. I also want to see universal healthcare, as I said before, and I want to see an expansion of behavioral healthcare because I'm a psych nurse, and I want to see everyone have access to health care and behavioral health care they need in a preventative way. Because I don't know anybody struggling through COVID right now that doesn't need to see a therapist. If we had a show of hands, I bet everybody could think of someone in their family or even themselves who has either seen a therapist or needed a therapist. And a lot of those people are paying out of pocket. So we have work to do. That's what I want to see.
Great, thank you. Ms. Ortega, you have the floor.
Progressive, what does it mean to me? It means valuing people and community over corporations and profits. And no, I will not take corporate money. I doubt they'll give it to me based on who I am and the issues that I've stood for and fight for every day. I'd be shocked if Elon Musk gave me a check, but if he did, I would turn it away. And part of that means that I want to keep fighting for why my parents brought me here, for that American dream that they have and that many of us still have. As an immigrant, as a woman, as a mother, I still believe in what we can do as a country, as a state, as a community. And that's what it means. It means having not just a job, but a good union job, not having to work 2 or 3 minimum wage jobs to pay the rent, but an opportunity to buy a home and eventually retire with dignity. And that includes access to healthcare that we all should have. It also means fighting for our environment, but thinking about our future generations to come and standing for something and acting on it and delivering, not just using it as a talking point or a cute slogan or a hashtag. It means delivering for our communities. That's what it means to be a progressive.
Thank you for your response. And lastly, Sean.
I don't think I fit a certain definition. To me, progressive means that you're putting forward bold solutions to the problems that we're faced with. And in those terms, I consider myself progressive. Going back to the contribution question, yes, I will take contributions from local businesses, companies, unions, union PACs, association PACs. I mean, this is how funding happens. And, I'm not going to take contributions from any organization or company that I don't feel meets my values. If they're bad actors, such as big tobacco or big oil or police union money, I'm not going to take it. But I have taken money from developers, and it's kind of interesting to me that they become so vilified in our local political discussion. In my interaction with developers, they're the ones that are building our homes. They're the ones that are working with trades to make sure, I'm talking about the building trades, the unions, to make sure that we're providing homes and commercial development in our communities. And bottom line is that I'm always going to vote for my constituents. I have taken money from developers. I voted against really big development projects. I have taken money from the building trades. And when I thought what they were proposing or doing did not meet the needs of my community, I told them and I voted against their interests. At the end of the day, we need to make sure we're working with everyone, and that includes our small businesses, our industries, our unions, and all of our local groups and associations. So I welcome them all to the table, and I will have those conversations, and I'll tell them straight when I don't agree with where they stand on any given position.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that question, for your answers. I'd like to ask this one question that was posted in the chat. I'm going to put it there again, and I'll read it aloud. It was, what is your vision for public transit in 80/20, and how will you address barriers to that vision in the state legislature? And we're going to begin with Ms. Ortega.
Sorry, could you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so we need to invest in public transportation. Public transportation is it's a way for a lot of our communities to have access to get to the doctors, to get to work. And it's part of our environmental impact. If we want to make a difference in our communities, we need to have a very robust public transit system that works for all of us. And that means making sure that we invest in our public transportation system, that we take care of, that we invest in the structure, that we invest in the workers, and that we provide safety. A lot of it has been cut through COVID. And I've actually had to deal a lot with my workers who, want to continue to provide service, but don't have the quality protections to keep themselves safe. So my vision is to continue to, expand our public transit system in 80/20 by making sure we have the resources for it, but also taking care of what we have currently to make sure that the workers that are providing those services are safe themselves. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you for that response. Sean, your turn.
I have been doing this work on Dublin City Council and in Rebecca's office. We have to ensure that we have smart transit-oriented development with robust systems for multimodal transit. In the suburbs, in this district, we have serious last mile problems, right? And so we're going to have to use technology-enabled solutions to address that problem. Not everyone is going to be able to take a train or a bus. They need to be able to get to that connector. And there's a lot of innovative ways we can do that. In Dublin, we have started looking at an autonomous vehicle pilot program that will provide small format transportation that hopefully someday will allow for us to provide more last mile transit to our stations. In addition, we did a pilot program where we provide vouchers for people to take ride-sharing apps so that they can get to the bus stop. I know that there are issues with ride-sharing apps, and we've got to address those issues, particularly around equity and the labor concerns. However, the fact of the matter is that people do use them. And if we can get them to use them more often and get on the BART or get on a bus, then I'm all for that, and we'll work out the other issues. And then lastly, particularly in this area of the district, Valley Link, we absolutely have to invest in big, bold projects that are going to do a lot for that 580 spine. Valley Link is going to take a commuter rail from Tracy and beyond into the East Dublin BART station. And that's going to allow for us to get cars off of the road. We need to invest more money in these kinds of solutions. And I'm really happy that Valley Link has decided they're moving towards a 100% green hydrogen model. So not only is that going to take cars off the road, all those single occupancy cars off of the road, which are cutting through our communities and spewing exhaust, but it's also going to be done so in a green way that's going to lower our greenhouse gas emissions. These are the kind of projects that we need to advocate for at the state level, and we need to put really bold solutions in place to make it happen.
Great. Thank you so much for also bringing up Valley Link, very important project. Lastly, Jennifer.
Yeah, I completely agree that what we see around 80/20 is that we are transit corridor centric. We are surrounded by 680, 580, 238, 880, and Train and BART. There's a lot of air pollution coming our way from these highways and freeways, and people are spending hours on commutes because housing is unaffordable. I have a friend who was a bus driver for 15 years. This woman never had a ticket or an accident in her entire adult life. And then she moved to Stockton while working in San Francisco because she couldn't afford housing that was close to work anymore. And she got into her first accident after a few months because she was falling asleep behind the wheel. Not having transit solutions has real life impacts. We absolutely have to have Valley Link Rail because it is going to be very important for connecting the Valley to Stockton and beyond. Tracy, Stockton, we have to be able to get people back and forth to where housing is affordable. It's better if we can have transit-oriented housing as we decide how to make plans, both locally with local control and as we legislate the policy that shapes whatever localities have the ability to do. Renewable energy is a must. And while we are in construction, the jobs have to be good union jobs that give people 100% living wages. And we have to make sure that afterwards, public transit is operated with good union jobs, because that is what's going to keep people in our communities and with the ability to live well and have pensions after. We have to make sure people have multimodal access. It has to be accessible from the first mile to the last mile, which means people have to be able to get to and from their door to transit, either by walking, on their bicycle, by bus, on their wheelchair, whatever the mode of transportation is, preferably without relying on gig drivers, because gig drivers are not treated well. Gig drivers are not treated as though they are employees, and gig drivers are not paid living wages. I do not want to see a reliance on gig drivers. I do want to see people have the ability to access their public transit by being able to get to it easily and quickly without adding pollution into our environment. We have enough already. And all of that has to be considered as we think about transit. And that's what I'm pushing for.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I feel very honored to have the next question asked by my Assembly member, Bauer Kahan. You now have the floor.
All of your Assembly member for now, but not for long, which is so sad. But first of all, this is bringing back such memories because this was the first Democratic club that endorsed me in my race. And I remember this forum well, and it's fun to be here watching these incredible candidates. As I'll preface this with a little bit of a disclaimer, which is, as many of you know, I've endorsed Sean, but because I've been in the trenches with him for 5 years, he's incredible. But I want to say how lucky we are that all of these candidates are running. I mean, just listen to them. I don't even need to say it because you're all hearing it, but we are so lucky to have such incredible people stepping up to run for this office. So one of you will likely, although there's a couple other candidates, will likely end up being my partner in representing the Tri-Valley. And the Tri-Valley really is an area that I've spent a lot of time focusing on. And in part, that's because it tends to be a desert of services. In the county, often it's forgotten, it's left out. When we see services for healthcare or food, it is, even with the vaccine efforts, we saw that the Tri-Valley was not at the top of anyone's list, despite having communities that desperately needed that. And we're lucky to have a community that steps up and does it and has partners in Stanford Valley Care and others that will do the work. But it's really critical that I have a partner. And I think it is one of the benefits. I'm sad that I lost part of Dublin and Pleasanton, but I think having one more person that speaks for the Tri-Valley will actually be an asset. So what I want to ask each of you is sort of what will your focus be? Obviously, these issues you've all talked about, education, healthcare, housing, are critical, but we also do district bills and budget asks come in for our local communities. And what will you do for the Tri-Valley as a
Great. Thank you so much for that question. I will miss your representation just a little bit. I'll let Sean begin.
Thank you, Rebecca, for that question. And it's been an honor working with you, and I hope to continue to serve as your partner to get results for the Tri-Valley. We've done so much incredible work, and part of that has been the environmental work that we've done here in the Tri-Valley. Like I said, Valley Link is a huge priority, and I will work side by side with you to make sure that we get the funding that deserves. Been very proud of the work you've done in preserving open spaces, such as what you were able to do with Tesla Park. And as we saw recently in the Lawrence Livermore National Lab study from 2020, that is an important piece of the puzzle that's going to make it so that we can get to not only carbon neutral, but we need to get to carbon negative going forward if we want to meet our goals. And preserving and developing open space in a way that naturally sequesters carbon is an important part of that. But we have some tremendous environmental work to do in the future, and it's stuff that's impacting the Tri-Valley and this state. I'd love to work with you on a plastics bill. Finally, if we can get that approved, I'd love to work with you to make sure that we're expanding access to solar, including rooftop solar. Now is not the time to start taking any options off the table. It's an all or the above approach, and we need to make sure that we have the energy capability of the future. Finally, I would say making sure that we work together across the region to continue the good work of smart transit-oriented development. Valley Link will be part of that conversation as we create TODs around those stations. And I look forward to working with you to make sure that happens.
Great. Thank you so much for that response. Jennifer, you're up next.
Thank you. I think it's important for the Tri-Valley to be remembered and represented. I think similarly to the ways that the unincorporated community often feels left out and left behind, we see that we have different, I think, reputations. People imagine that the Tri-Valley is full of rich folks, out in the suburbs, and that's not necessarily true. People are housing overburdened and can't afford to pay the rent. They're at risk of being hungry, still need food resources. Folks need affordable housing. The needs of the Valley are the same as the needs in the unincorporated community, and the needs in San Leandro, and the needs in Hayward, and the needs in Union City for that matter. We all have to be represented fairly. We need access to social services. We need the county to have the ability to reach in easily and give us what we need. And the state makes sure the county has what it needs. We need to make sure that everybody has access to vaccines and testing, especially while we're still struggling with COVID surge, which may come again and again. We need to make sure that you all have a pipeline for communication directly to the state capitol. Frankly, I'm gonna give you guys one of my crazy ideas. This is why I say I'm hella left. I want everyone who lives in 8020 to be able to come to the Capitol and lobby me and lobby Rebecca and lobby Senator Skinner and lobby Assemblywoman Wicks and tell them directly in person whatever you think is important. I want you to get on a shuttle bus and come to Sacramento 2 days a week so that you can be present as often as paid lobbyists are. Because without the voice of the people in the community, we're going to be guessing. And frankly, my guess may be okay, but your guess is best. It's not a guess coming from you directly. I want every single one of my constituents to be able to come to my office and say to me, without having to wait for me to come back from Sacramento on Friday or Saturday, but come on any given day, without having to pay any money, with just being able to say, you know what, we're working on Valley Link, it's taking too damn long. I need some food, what's happening here? COVID is messing up my kids' school. I need you to talk to me about it. I want everyone to have access because that is how we're going to get our needs met. And that might be one of those wild solutions to think about, bringing people to Sacramento, but the paid lobbyists are there every day. So I want you to know that it's beyond having an open door. It's about giving you complete and total access to the Capitol so that you can have your needs met. All of us deserve it. There's 500,000 people being served in this district and 500,000 voices that need to be listened to. I'm ready to listen. And I know we need transit, and I know we need healthcare, and I know we need affordable housing, but there's more. There's something that Joe down the street needs. And there's something that my auntie across the way needs. And I want everybody to be able to be heard.
Great. Thank you so much for that response. And lastly, Ms. Ortega. Oh, you're still on mute.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
3 years into this and I still have to wiggle with the mute button. So I would work with you just like I have with every other elected official when it comes to the budget in the Tri-Valley. Living in San Leandro and having been part of AD 18, I know what it's like to live in a city that's kind of just, you know, it was all about Oakland and then, oh, maybe San Leandro. And so I very much want to be able to work with you, with our mayors in the Tri-Valley, with our board of supervisors to prioritize what's needed in the community and not just think about or guess, but actually work in partnership with all of you. Because while all these ideas sound good and great, I actually know what it's like to be there in the middle of the night when we're negotiating the budget and when people start prioritizing things that maybe they weren't prioritizing earlier. So it's important to go in there with clear sense of what I want to deliver to our communities and make sure that I go in there with those voices in my head and keep them when these negotiations are happening so that I'm able to work with all of you and deliver for this communities. And that's why I think it's important that collaboration is talked about. In order for us to deliver for the 500,000 people that live here, we need to be able to all work together, whether it's for our parks, for transportation, for housing. It can't be done with just one person. It has to be part of a process. There's 80 of us. There has to be collaboration, and I'm looking forward to that.
Great. Thank you so much for your response and for your question, Assemblywoman. I would just like to ask this next question. It was posted in the chat. It has to do with voting rights. I'm going to repost it for the candidates, but I figure as the federal government strives to pass voting rights legislation, this will be fair for our local election. It says proportional representation is fairer than current city council election systems. A 2019 bill would have allowed general law cities in California to adopt this system had it become law. Would you support fair electoral systems at a local level and even for the state legislature? Perfect. And I'll begin with Jennifer.
All right. I think that representation matters so very much, and every single voter deserves to have their voice heard. I think that what we see in our electoral process, sadly, is that not enough people show up to the ballot. And what I hope to do during this campaign is reach every voter in 80-20 by mail, by social media, by making sure that they answer their phones, by texting, so that folks are aware that this election is happening. A lot of times people are so busy working multiple jobs, trying to make ends meet, that they're not even fully aware that the election cycle is happening. If it's a big presidential year, we have more awareness, but I think that the most fair electoral process is when everyone's voice is heard. So I want to see automatic voter registration. I want to see a voting holiday. I want to see voting registration that is same day all over our country, and especially in this state. And right now, as we are struggling nationally to ensure that voting rights are enshrined permanently, I want to see people reaching out to the Senate saying we have got to end the filibuster. Because if federal law changes, voters in California will also be disenfranchised. And if we don't have protections, you know, we're lucky to be in this state, but things can change. The Supreme Court is making decisions that we never thought were possible. So if we don't make sure that we protect voting rights and all of our rights, especially rights for reproductive health and access to abortion, we're going to see major rollback in access.
Great. Thank you so much for that response. Ms. Ortega, you have the floor.
Yeah, voting rights are incredibly important to me. As a naturalized citizen, I had to go through the process of, being, going through the naturalization process in order to get the right to vote. And I actually didn't even realize this, having grown up in this country my entire life, learning to speak English, watching General Hospital, that by the time I turned 18, I didn't have the right to vote. And I actually had to pay and go through an entire process with my family to be able to get this right. So for me, it's especially important that everyone has the right to vote, that everyone can get off work, that everyone either, and now through COVID, that we can fill out our ballot home and be able to participate in such an important process. As Jennifer said, there's many parts of this country where we don't have that luxury, and our democracy and our ability to vote has been under attack. I mean, we just came under, the anniversary of what we saw in the Capitol, and the white supremacists attacking our very rights of civil liberties and our ability to vote. And so I just think we should make it a national holiday. We should continue to fight for it, and we to make sure that everyone has the right to vote.
Great, thank you so much. And Mr. Kumagai.
So thank you very much for this question. I want to kind of take it on head on. This concept of proportional representation, and unfortunately, I don't have enough information about that particular bill. I know that there were, some conversations around proportional representation in the redistricting commission that happened last year, but I haven't heard about this idea about it being applied to city councils. So I'd be willing to take a look at that. I think that we have some big electoral conversations to have. One, that we extend redistricting, impartial redistricting commissions all the way down to the county and local levels, like we do at the state level. And another is that we address this crazy recall process that we all just went through and wasted millions of dollars because the bar to do a recall is just too low in this state and in our local elections. And it comes at the cost of taxpayers. We don't need a recall election for every single disagreement that we have with an elected official. That's what elections are for. And I'm all for advancing access to voting. We've done some great work on that in the past couple of years. Born out of the necessity of COVID-19, we expanded mail-in ballots to every single voter in this great state. And it was the safest, best election that we've had in our history. So there's no reason why we shouldn't continue to expand access for people. Before, remember, you had to put a stamp on that ballot, and we took that away. We made it so that it was free to mail in your ballot. So any way that we can lower the bar to access, I'm all for it.
Great, thank you so much. Due to time constraints, we will end the questioning here for the candidates, and we'll be moving towards closing statements. Each candidate will have 2 minutes for a closing statement. However, there was one question that I really wanted to ask, but I think you all can address in your closing statements, which is what differentiates you as candidates from one another? And I think to include that, it was a really good question asked in the chat. But yes, we will begin where we started with Ms. Ortega. Closing statement.
Thank you so much for having me here tonight. It's an honor and a privilege just to be able to say that I'm running for the seat, especially when, people who look like me don't usually get this kind of opportunity to be able to talk about the issues that really impact our communities. And that's why I decided to step up and run and hope to get your support and your vote. When I talk about, job creation and healthcare, affordable housing, homelessness, and schools, they're not just talking points to me. They're actual things that I've lived through, that I fight for every day, and that I've seen happening in our communities, and that I want to work to improve. And I want to continue the work that Assemblymember Cork has done in representing us in our communities and expand on it. I want to be able to show future generations that the American dream that my parents brought me here is still there. And we just need to fight for it. And we need to continue to have a voice and speak up and continue to just, to act in a way that will make our future generations proud to live in this community. And so again, I'll close with saying, we're all great, but I think what makes me different is the fact that I've actually been doing this for over 20 years and have a record of deliverables and recognition of that work. And that's why I'm hoping to get your support tonight. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you so much for coming. Sean, you're up next.
Thank you, Kanal, and thank you again, Tri-Valley Democrats, for your consideration tonight. Tonight, I ask you for your sole endorsement. When I drive through this district, I'm reminded of the neighborhood that I came from in West Phoenix, a working class neighborhood with people who are struggling to make ends meet, who want and deserve access to high quality education and quality healthcare. What makes me different? My decades of experience in the military, as a local Democratic activist, as an elected city council member, and as the district director, your district director in Assemblymember Rebecca Bauer-Cahan's office. I am ready, loaded to serve on day one. And I am the only Asian American running in this plurality Asian American Pacific Islander district. The people of Assembly District 20 need an assembly member who will work to build coalition and consensus to accomplish meaningful reforms in Sacramento and bring back results for the people of the Tri-Valley and for the East Bay. With your help, I know we can go on to victory in November and get to work to advance a smart agenda to tackle climate change, education, criminal justice reform, and the affordability crisis. That is why in just 1 week of this campaign, I have earned the endorsement and support of local and elected leaders who are longtime supporters of this club, such as Assemblymember Rebecca Bauer-Cahan, State Treasurer Fiona Ma, Dublin Mayor Melissa Hernandez, and council members Mike McCorston and Jean Josie, Dublin Unified School District Trustee Megan Rouse, Livermore Joint Unified School District Trustee Christy Wong, San Ramon Council Member Sabina Zephyr, Pleasanton Council Member retired Cheryl Cocalio, Zone 7 Water Board Directors Michelle Smith McDonald and Olivia Sanwong, and City of Dublin Commissioners Samir Qureshi and Richard Thornberry. I was also honored to have the support of elected officials past and present from across this district. You can learn more about my campaign on my website, seankumagai.com. Please follow me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter to learn more about my campaign and to join my team. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you very much for coming. And lastly, Jennifer.
Thank you all so much for allowing me this time to speak with you. It's a privilege and an honor. Tonight, I shared that I'm a union member and member leader. I entered the labor movement in California as a registered nurse, rank and file member of SEIU 1021, when one of the kindest men I ever met, my charge nurse, Doug Morin, handed me a little purple book. And he said, "This is your contract." Since then, I learned that the labor movement is about raising standards for working people, and it's about building power for all of us. I'm running as a grassroots candidate, which means I take no corporate donations so I can be the vessel of power for my community. I'm running to increase my advocacy from one patient at a time to advocating for our community and our entire state. I do some of this work already as trustee for the Alameda Health System, where I chair the finance committee that is responsible for managing a $1 billion budget during these uncertain times. When I win, I'll be the first openly gay Black Jew to ever serve the state of California in the legislature. Union organizing, union ethics, and the needs of my community will carry me forward every single day. It's the job of an organizer, after all, to bring people together. And I'll do that with other elected officials to move and pass policy. I'll do it in the spirit of my union, where we believe that when working people, people of color, women, immigrants, and low-wage workers have greater access to power, we create a better, more equal, and more just society. My name is Jennifer Esteen, registered nurse, rank and file member of SEIU 1021, councilperson representing the unincorporated community and health system of Alameda County. I'm here in service, and I ask for your sole endorsement of me for California State Assembly in Assembly District 20. And I come to you as a representative for our Assembly District as an ADEM with the support of many elected leaders and community members. Please check my website to learn more, where you can see a more thorough list of endorsements at jenniferesteen.com. You can follow me on social media at Esteen, the number 4 CA, and that's at Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. I'm thrilled and excited that you had this forum tonight and that you invited the 3 of us to participate. Thank you all so much.
Great. Thank you all for coming and talking about the issues with the Tri-Valley Democrats. Thank you to Ellis and Evan for letting me moderate this debate. It was my first time. Hopefully I did pretty decent. It's great to see a lot of elected officials and community activists in the room. But no, great job all around. And I will pass it back to Evan.
All right. Thank you so much. So I just wanted to say, wow, this was awesome. What a great group of candidates. You know, always the best problem to have, which is, you know, choosing amongst very qualified, very excellent candidates. I do want to thank everyone for coming out. I want to thank all of our questioners for all the great questions and comments. Sorry we couldn't get to all of them. I want to thank our moderator, Kunal, for doing an excellent job with moderating his first debate. And I really do, again, want to thank all of the candidates for coming out and making the time to come to this meeting. It was great meeting all of you. I just really quickly want to go over again the rules of our endorsement process, which is I'm posting the ballot one last time in the chat. Click on that. It will give you the option to vote for each of the candidates. You can vote for 0, 1, 2, or 3 candidates. You can vote for as many as you would like. The club process for endorsement is for any candidate, they get 60% yes votes out of the yes, no votes for that candidate will be endorsed as long as it's 6 or more votes. And we will keep voting open until the end of the meeting, which is roughly 30 something minutes from now. And so if you would like to vote, you can vote anytime in that period. I also put up links to all 3 candidates' websites. So if you'd like to do a little more research before voting, feel free, as well as if you are interested in contributing to any of the campaigns, there is the option to donate to all 3 of them on their websites, as well as to volunteer and to help them out. If one of the candidates really spoke to you, I encourage you to reach out, join the campaign, help them get elected. Help your candidates beyond just the vote tonight with donations or volunteering. Get on their mailing list, learn more about them, and really make sure to empower any candidate who you support. And the club will let everyone know who we endorsed as soon as we have the final results. And we will do our best to support the candidates the club endorses. So thank you very much. Thank you so much for coming. And with that, we're going to move on to the next item of our agenda, which will be the pre-endorsement caucus.
Point of information, I guess, Evan. Some of us obviously have 2 votes and 1 click in chat. How are you going to handle that? I know Valerie Arkin's family has got at least 2 votes.
Ellis, if you guys go in and fill it out, it's going to prompt you for the email. So I would encourage you to put the email that is in that you signed up with the club with, and you can each fill out one of those. So in your case, Ellis, if you guys want to use the same email, in the name section, put a unique name, and I will be uploading these and scrubbing the file against our member list. So just make sure, fill out the form twice, but put a separate name in there. And we'll cross-reference it against all active members.
So there's an email that is going to have the choices in it?
The form is a Google form. You do not have to have Google, but you have to have a valid email. and put in the name, and then you select all your choices and submit it. And if you can only do that once, please. I did not require it to only be one per person because it would require you to have a Google account. So if you do that, fill it out once for each person, I will scrub it, and we'll take a little more time. It may take me till the end of the meeting to get this together, or even post meeting, to make sure we don't have duplicates.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I saw in chat.
I see. Is it requiring you to have a Gmail? It should only require a valid email. Jean, is it saying you have to have a Gmail account?
Yeah, it wouldn't let me access the form with my non-Gmail email address, which I prefer to use my non-Gmail one for these things. I mean, I did go ahead and vote, but I just wanted to alert you to that.
It
did allow me to access with my Yahoo email.
Yeah, I use my Comcast email. If you're already logged into Google, go ahead and log out. It's probably trying the default.
Okay, I did vote, so the problem's solved for me. I just wanted to make sure it was okay for others.
Okay, thank you.
It worked fine for me.
Okay, sounds good. And if anyone else has a problem, let us know before the end of the meeting. With that, I'd like to move on to the nomination of our pre-endorsement delegates. Let me post the ballot one more time. So there's the ballot. So for the pre-endorsement delegates, I'm actually going to turn over this part of the meeting to Rocky Fernandez. We will get 4 delegates for the 8016 race, I believe. And if you could just give a really brief summary.
Race. Right.
8016, I think we get 4, isn't it? Or
okay, so I'll get to it. It gets complicated because we just did redistricting, right?
Oh yeah, there are also new numbers now. Yeah.
So you have to put in 4 delegates that currently live in 8016, but they'll vote in the districts that they live in now, or for 2022, right? So that's where it gets complicated because of redistricting. So they'll be voting prospectively in the districts that they will live in to be able to vote in this upcoming election. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. So do you want to take away and give just a little brief description?
Sure, I can. Lynette Henley currently is the regional director for 8016. I suspect that in the upcoming pre-endorsement conferences, I'll be the regional director that oversees it, because any district that has more than 50% of the current delegates in a new district will oversee the election. So with 8020, given that it's mostly Hayward, Union City, Castro Valley, unincorporated, and the parts of the Tri-Valley, that's most likely me. So it's exciting. It's like exciting to have an open race. I spoke with most of the candidates already. If you have to return my calls, that's cool. But the pre-endorsement will be happening on February 12th. Saturday. We don't have a time slot exactly, but most of this is going to be virtual because of the pandemic. So delegates that are appointed by clubs, people who won the ADEMs, people who are appointed by the County Central Committee, and people who are appointed by elected officials like the assembly members, senators, Congress members, statewide elected officials, and party officials will be voting via the ballots they're going to get on February 4th. They'll have to email those to me and the party. We'll go ahead and read off the ballots, and candidates who get 70% of the endorsement vote will be put on a consent calendar to go to the state convention. If any race, including this one, has more than 50%, then it'll go to a runoff, more or less, at the state convention, which is currently scheduled to be live in Los Angeles. I know we all see the headlines. It could be virtual. We'll figure that out in the next 3 weeks. But club reps will not have a vote at the runoff at the convention. They'll only be participating at the pre-endorsement. I know that's a lot of information. Happy to answer any questions, but that's the deal.
Great, thank you. And so then we get 4 representatives to go, and we'd like to also get alternates for our bylaws. you'll need to be voted in, so you'll volunteer and then we'll have a vote of
Right.
club members.
And I need those lists by 5 p.m. tomorrow to make sure that it all gets
Yeah.
put in correctly.
So we need to do this tonight. If you're not here, there is no second chance.
And I would say, Evan, like the timeline is really sped up by the fact we got the maps late, as all the candidates know. And so usually we'd have several months to go ahead and figure this out. Unfortunately, now we have about a week. So that's tough.
Yeah, and so just to make sure it's clear on who can run for this position, it's anyone in the old 8016 can run,
Right.
to be able to vote but if they live in the 8020 district, they will be able, the new 8020 district, they will be able to vote in the 8020.
That's correct. And if they live in the neighboring district represented by a Assembly Member Bauer Cahan, they would also vote in that pre-endorsement. So yeah.
Perfect. Then with that, we're looking for 4 to 6 volunteers who would like to volunteer for this position. If you would prefer to be an alternate, you can let me know and we can put that in. Otherwise, if we get 6 people, we will have to do a quick vote, and the top 4 vote getters become our representatives and the other 2 alternates.
So did you go?
May I suggest that those members who do live in the new AD20 run, because frankly, this is the only contentious race around.
Yeah, I would encourage 8020. The 8016 will be a very, very easy one.
Will people within,
glad
I'm
you
sorry,
all
will,
made that.
I may have missed this. Will people within the 8016, the new 8020, the old 8016, will they be able to vote in 8016? I mean, I thought we were nominating 8016 candidates. I'm a little confused. Sorry. I was looking at the votes. Not paying attention.
So it's anyone who lived in what was 8016 can go for this position. If you live in the new version of 8016, you will vote in the 8016 pre-endorsement conference. If you live in the new version of 8020, you will vote in the 8020 conference.
That's accurate. Yes.
So if you would like to run for this position, if I can see either a show of hands or Ron, I believe I see. Yes, Ron? Yep. Okay. Who else would like?
Yes, correct.
I'll throw my hat in if there's 8016.
Okay.
Jackie.
Jackie. Sean? Are you? You're muted.
Well, I'm not going to run for it, but what I do want to clarify with folks is, like Ellis said, only folks who live in the new 8020 are going to be able to weigh in on any pre-endorsing caucus or endorsement meeting vote, because 8016 is very likely to be uncontested in the Democratic primary election. That being said, I would like to nominate Megan Rouse and Amy Miller, longtime members of this club and elected school board members, past and present. And I would also like to nominate Linda Knapp, who's, I think she's here, has been a longtime member and volunteer in this club and would make an outstanding representative for the Tri-Valley Dems.
Excellent. Have you spoken to Megan and Amy just to confirm that they're interested?
No, but all they have to do, as Rocky said, is they will be representatives of this club and they will get an email with a ballot and they will make a decision and they will email that ballot back. So it's very, yeah, very low commitment. So I put that forward to the membership as a suggestion. 3 great Democratic women who can actually make a difference in the 80-20 race.
Okay. And Linda, just to check with you, are you okay with the nomination?
I guess it surprised me.
All right. So that would give us 5 names. Is there anyone else who would like to volunteer as maybe an alternate?
I believe the Arkin family lives in the new AD 20. If I remember correctly, they're west of Hop Yard in Pleasanton. Is that correct, Valerie?
No, we are east of Hop Yard.
Oh, my mistake.
Well, that does give us 5 names. So I would ask, just as this is contentious rates, Ron or Jackie, would one of you be okay with being?
You know what? I'll take my name out of the running.
Would you be an alternate?
Sure.
Awesome. Then I would propose this slate. So I'll make a motion. The slate would be Megan Rouse, Amy Miller, Linda Knapp, Ron Lawrence with an alternate, and Jackie. Do we have a second?
Second.
I heard a second from several people. Ellis came through clearest. So Ellis gets the second. And then we will have a quick voice vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
All opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing none, the motion passes unanimously. I will double check with Jackie that we get that information over to Rocky ASAP because it needs to be in basically tonight.
I'll get it. I'll get it.
I have all the information, so I can turn it in, but I'll check with you after the meeting just to make sure we're doing it right. Thank you, Rocky, for that.
I would say, and as Sean said, yes, like incumbents are presumed to be endorsed until, there's some mass group of people objecting to it. And with the civil member Bauer Kayan, I don't expect that's going to be the case. So, yeah.
Yeah. So thank you
Thanks,
very much.
Rocky, for the vote of confidence.
I'm pretty sure you're safe. So fingers crossed. All right. So with that, thank you again. And we are going to move on to the bylaws amendment. Let me pull that up. It's going to take me just a moment to go through all of this. And then hopefully what I'm doing makes a lot of sense. So I'm sharing my screen. I'm going to go through this kind of quickly. And so please, if you have a question along the way, just butt in, speak over me. Let me know what your questions are, comments, changes, grammatical errors, anything like that. So I'm looking at a revision to the bylaws. Much of it is to make things a little bit clearer and to just add a few things that I thought were important to the bylaws. So we start with membership. Brief change is to change it from 16 to 18 to change it to just 18 or younger, allowing basically students of any age to join the club. And it allows them to vote in the club. They wouldn't count towards our pre-endorsement numbers unless they were eligible to vote in the next election. Additionally, you're putting
Sean, about that one, should you have a child, that child you could put up for membership even as an infant under these rules. Do we want infants counted as members? And by the way, that count goes toward the count that you would submit to Rocky or whoever the regional director is as to how many people we have in our club.
Per the updated rules from Rocky and the county, they would need to be 18 in the next election. In order
Okay, so they have to be registered voters.
They'll need to be, actually, Rocky, I don't know if you're still there. Do they need to be registered to count towards our pre-endorsement numbers or just eligible to vote?
We're working on that in terms of like undocumented residents, things like that. That hasn't been solved at the state party level. But I would say overall, if they're registered, if they're registered to vote, yes, obviously. We're still working on the other issue because clearly there's a lot of people that we want to make sure get to participate. Hasn't been resolved yet at the state level.
Okay, thank you. Marisol, do you have another comment?
Yes, just a kind of a recommendation. I mean, while I understand the purpose of full-time students and persons 18 years of age, that part, the full-time students part, for me, as someone who, I'm just thinking it might exclude some students who have disabilities. and may not have the option to attend full-time. So I feel that or it may be students who are single parents or have other socioeconomic issues. And I think that might be excluding some people unintentionally. That's all.
Okay. Would you like it changed? Would it work to just change it to students?
I think so. I think if they're a student, they're a student. Thank you.
I'd second that.
Okay, and then on the other part, did we want to change age restriction or with the information on them not counting for the pre-endorsement if they're not going to be 18? Is that okay?
I think we ought to have a minimum age limit, and if we wanted to include all high school students, also maybe 14 as a minimum, if lower than 16. And it also keeps our credibility high if we have very young people, or as Ella said, infants. That reduces the credibility of the club.
I should point that Kunil joined the club when he was 15.
Yeah, so
I would say that, infants won't know the intention, but I think for, high school is probably reasonable.
okay, I would just say I would make that 13 just because there are freshmen who are coming in at 13 sometimes.
Yes, high school is definitely reasonable.
Yeah, the high schools have social justice clubs now, and they start at freshman year, so we need to think of that.
All right, so 13 to 18, does that work for everyone? It's probably not going to be a lot of 13-year-olds, the target being high school.
Nobody crawling.
No. All right. Sounds good. The next one that Marisol commented on is students and persons 18 years of age and under shall have membership dues waived upon confirmation of status by the executive committee. So if they can prove they're a student or that they're under 18, then their membership dues are waived. Moving on, most of this was all in the same. I just put this as just a clarifying thing, and I would be open to changing it personally, but it was elsewhere in the rules, and I thought I'd put in our qualifications for voting. Members in good standing for 28 or more days shall be eligible for voting. I would like to reduce the number, but I wanted to get the club's opinion on that briefly.
The reason that we put that in was that it was possible that the vote could get packed. Even a 7-day window before the meeting didn't guarantee that the vote wouldn't get packed. That is, a candidate would have a bunch of their friends join the club just so they can get the club's endorsement. And we wanted to avoid that. 28-day window seemed to be wide enough, and that's the shortest distance time-wise between our meetings. The February meeting to the March meeting
Makes sense.
28 days.
Marisol?
Yes, so I absolutely agree with Ellis that it's good to make sure to give a little leeway distance from when we have these events. But one of the things that's always kind of worried me is that, say, for example, in this endorsement meeting, it's right at the turn of the new year. And so it's right at the point where people may be renewing. And so January, I think, is just a tricky month.
Yeah,
so I don't know if there's a way to maybe make an exception for the month of January.
Yeah, if you're a member the year before, you're a member through the month of January. So your membership actually expires on January 31st. Okay.
Evan, maybe that's something we can put in there in some regard that, dues are, I know it says they're due in January and they're delinquent at the end of the month, but what happens during endorsement votes in January? That would be a good thing to clarify for the secretary.
Okay, so
I think it's not necessary. I think the 28 days is the right number, and I'm strongly in favor of it. And I think that all members who have paid their annual dues by January 31st is sufficient.
Yeah, I was going to say we have this area of the members in good standing, which I think covers it. I can add extra clarification if needed, but
I think what the current system works pretty well, and if it's not broke, we don't need to fix it.
All
Good
right.
idea.
Carrying on, presiding officer was just to change wording because it might be the chair or the vice chair or someone else in other cases. I added a rule on voting just to make sure it's clear on voting, which is unless otherwise stated, votes can be taken as a voice vote with 50% plus 1 majority to pass. If there's an ambiguous vote, say a lot of people saying aye and nay on the voice vote, a written vote can be requested by anyone and will be conducted if seconded.
Very good.
Marisol, did you have an added comment?
Oh, that's a residual hand. Sorry about that.
No problem. Treasury funds, this is all just some grammatical fixes when approved by a vote. The organization can use funds for promoting the Democratic Club, Democratic candidates, or initiatives in line with democratic values that affect the citizens of the district. And added in it was elsewhere in the bylaws, expenditures of funds for operations of the organization don't require a vote and can be done by the executive committee. Again, just some clarifying on wording. Any endorsement vote requires the 5-day notification, not just candidate endorsements. And also there was an election of officers on this list, so I put that in just as I thought it was important to have the notification for that. Changing club organization is a grammatical fix. And adding in just simply, there was some wording around no proxy voting. And so I just added in that no proxies will be permitted. We don't do proxies in our club. So just simply got rid of some of the things about quorum and voting and all of that. I changed the wording on online voting just simply to when deemed appropriate by the president or executive committee, online internet meetings may be held. All efforts shall be taken to follow all standard rules with open voting allowed if secret ballots prove unfeasible. Just kind of tightening up the wording there. Moving on, the officer duties, I did not change at all. This is removing, that was moved to a different section. That's about spending funds. I added in a section, I'm not going to go over this. I'm not going to read through it, but this was, since these were all posted, this is just about standing committees, basically saying that for the president to create a standing committee, the standing committee needs to have a defined purpose, and then a chair needs to be nominated. So it needs to line up with our purpose as an organization. It needs to have a chair nominated, and then the committee and the chair need to be approved by a vote. So the president or executive committee can create the standing committee, but it does not exist or have the ability to do anything until there's a vote of the people. That goes through just some kind of detailing out what standing committees are, and that there are 3 that are required to be active at all times, which is membership, recruitment, hospitality, and communications.
I have a question concerning expenditures made by the standing committee. It looks like maybe as it's written that they have the capability of making expenditures without the rest of the membership or the executive committee voting for them.
My interpretation of the bylaws would be,
let's take a look.
Let's see. It would be if granted authority by a vote of members, the standing committee may perform actions that would normally require a vote of the organization, such as expenditure of funds or endorsements. So it would require a vote to give them the authority to spend the money first.
Okay, that's it. That covers it.
Yeah,
I didn't see that part. Thanks.
I have something to say, like if I buy things for the club, like paper plates and stuff like that, I don't think I need the club's approval to buy that kind of stuff, or,
so that would be, that would fall under kind of the executive committee's ability to approve expenditures for the club's operations. And so you just need to check with me or, the president in the
usually
future.
the treasurer, yeah.
And the
Okay.
treasurer, just to make sure.
Right, buy
so
napkins.
Yeah,
things
that's
like
part of
that.
operations.
Okay.
Ad hoc committees are simply temporary committees that say have a specific purpose, and those can just be formed by the president. They have to have a timeline of no more than 1 year. So that's going to be if we have some specific task we need. I don't know what it would be off the top of my head. Mary?
For standing committees, when action is held for the chair of the standing committee, for example, an annual opportunity to choose a different chairperson.
It's
I didn't
actually,
see anything mentioned about that.
no, and I figured to leave it up to the standing committee and the president of executive committee if we need new leadership. For example, Sharon's doing a great job with hospitality. I don't want to burden us with extra votes to, keep going. If she steps down or if the committee wants a new person, we'll have an election.
I only bring this up because I've been on various committees where the leadership never changes and it's awkward to think about it because there's no opportunity to discuss it. And by creating an opportunity to discuss it, it validates the existing chairperson if that person is to be retained, or it gives an opportunity for someone else to take charge.
Okay. I could add in very easily, must be affirmed on an annual basis.
Thank you.
Easy as that. I like easy solutions. All right. On elections, I added a little clause in for elections with 3 or more candidates. This was actually not, this was from member comments. In an election with 3 or more candidates for a specific office, the election shall be held using single winner ranked choice voting or other instant runoff voting system. It would be, if there was a different system, that would be up to the executive committee, but it would have to be a ranked choice or instant runoff type of system, with the winner ultimately receiving 50% plus 1 of the votes. And elections for officers shall be held by secret ballot. So even in times of COVID, we need to figure out a way to have a secret ballot for that. Couple just wording things, basically replacing officers, the nominations can be taken from the floor and we follow normal voting rules. Endorsement purpose, the organization endorses candidates and issues to promote our purpose and elect democratic leaders. Endorsements shall be followed by direct action to support the enactment of endorsed policies and election of endorsed candidates. It shall be the responsibility of the executive committee or nominate standing committee to fulfill such an obligation. In other words, if we endorse someone, we have to back it up, and they need to be in line with our beliefs and our club's purpose. Any member can bring forward endorsements may be brought forward by any member of the club, by the executive committee or a standing committee, as long as they meet the allowances for candidates allowed or endorsements allowed, and they must be listed on the agenda, sent to membership. Candidate endorsements, the organization, I just simply added in basically that the organization shall work to take all reasonable actions to contact all candidates for the office and give each candidate a fair allotment of time to present to the organization. So everyone should be given a fair and hopefully timely chance to present to the organization. And the endorsement vote shall be held after it is deemed likely that no additional Democratic candidates are expected to enter the race and for all candidates of a race simultaneously. So for example, in 80-20, it is a big race. I do not expect any other candidates to jump into the race. I think it was one that you have to plan ahead for. And so it was likely there was no additional candidates and we were able to meet with all of them simultaneously and vote simultaneously. I think this helps our endorsement process go a little bit more smoothly. This is just simply the section number has changed. There's no real change to this. The parts that are X'd out are entirely stuff that was just moved to other parts of the bylaws to make it a little bit cleaner. Again, a couple of organization club changes. Jean?
Sorry, I was muted. We don't have anywhere in here that says that we will only endorse as many candidates as there are open seats for a particular race. For example, tonight we said we could endorse all 3 candidates for 80-20, and we do have a clause that says we will work to elect our endorsed candidates, which to me is a conflict. If we endorsed all 3 candidates tonight, or for any race, but let's use this one as an example, we endorse all 3 candidates, and we're working to elect all 3 candidates, we are then working against, in some respects, our endorsed candidates, because only one of them can win. But if we're working for all 3, we are by default working against
at any given time, some of our endorsed candidates. So I would propose that we put a clause in our bylaws that say we will endorse no more candidates than there are seats in any given race to avoid that scenario.
Yeah, I just, as a little bit of history on that, is we did bring that to the club about 2 years ago. Ellis, maybe correct me, 2 or 3 years ago. And it was voted that the club at that time did vote to maintain multiple endorsements.
Yeah.
Yes, I
You're
remember.
right.
I'd like to
It was
revisit.
2 years ago that we did vote on that. And frankly, if we were going to do that, we ought to have kind of a separate vote on that rather than this bylaws change, because we're going to have a hell of a debate.
You know, sometimes the reason we voted for all the candidates is because this may be their first place that they're, you know, that they're being interviewed. And it gives them the pause and, you know, begins their election, you know, gives them confidence to go on.
So I'm gonna agree with Alice on that. I agree with you, Jean, on your points, but I think Alice is right that that's something we can revisit maybe next meeting. I'll put it on the agenda as a separate item to add in, you know, a second addition to the bylaws. Rocky, did you have a comment?
Yeah, state party bylaws are very clear about the, you know, you can only endorse as many people as there are on the ballot, or, you know, as many positions there are. So actually, the whole club could be dechartered by the central committee and by the state party for endorsing more than one candidate, since there's only one position for, say, a state assembly member. Very clear.
Okay, we're going to need to fix that then.
Rocky, are you saying that that's a state requirement?
Yep.
Okay, because in the past, by the way, we did it with, I remember the Danville City Council, there were 2 open seats. We had 4 candidates. We endorsed all 4 candidates.
Okay,
And
but, well, I mean, I would say if the, you know, it's up to the central committee to ding you, but they probably should have for doing that, with, especially for pre-endorsements. There's no way you can endorse more than one candidate for one assembly seat.
Thank you for that, Rocky. Then I'm going to add in that information to this section because I do think that's an important point. Is there any opposition to me adding that in? Because we voted for the last set under our previous bylaws, we might get in trouble from the central committee. We might not, but we can update it. So if they come after us, we can say we fixed it. Steve, do you have a?
Can we punt both that decision and the voting for tonight to the next meeting because of that problem? Or do we want to take care of it tonight? I don't know, just to get confirmation
Let's
from everyone.
delay it. Let's delay the vote until we make a decision on that, because it's a very important matter. And the club membership voted firmly 2 years ago to have multiples. So I think we ought to see something in writing from the state. Can we actually get something in terms of a regulation? Maybe Jackie can come up with something, or someone can show us something that details that very clearly. And then we would need to change the bylaws to conform to the central committee dictates.
Rocky, where can I find the bylaws for the central committee? I've struggled to find those.
Sorry, I'll put the state party bylaws in the chat.
So is that the same bylaws that the central committee, Alameda County Central Committee, works under?
I'll find those. Just give me a moment.
Okay.
Then I think the other question is, does this rule just pertain to Congress, Assembly, and the Senate, or does it drill down to school boards and city councils?
Excellent question.
Generally, it applies to county central committees because they've adopted the same thing.
Yeah. So because we are already past meeting time, I'm going to say, I think the call I have for this is, I believe to be in line with what they say. I think the best option is to put in for now the new rule. It will take effect for the next meeting, and the next meeting will bring it back up to discuss further, because we can do a sweeping bylaws change right now. So we can't, I'm not going to revisit tonight's voting. Tonight's voting will be under the old rules and
Correct.
will stand as it is.
Correct.
But I'm going to say that I think, how can I word this exactly for any position?
Why don't we wait? Why don't you have you know,
So
till
what I-
next meeting?
What I'm proposing, and the reason I think that we should do it now, is because I
Okay.
don't want us to be outside of the rules for the county bylaws.
Oh,
Because
okay.
we are going to be endorsing again next meeting. The DAs are coming.
Okay. All right. So go ahead. Let's do it then.
We can do the research and get that in, but I don't want to have to do an endorsement vote before, you know, if we don't have to. So
Yeah, if we're doing another endorsement vote next meeting, before we change the bylaws and make a ruling on it, yes, we should change it tonight, because we can change the bylaws again to next meeting.
yeah. So that's, I'm going to simply put in that statement: for any position, the club can endorse no more candidates than open positions. Is that?
Yeah, that's wonderful. Because that, if there's differences between statewide offices and local offices, that covers it. We allow multiples if the position actually has multiples.
Oh, I'm actually
And
gonna copy.
You got it. I think you got it. Wonderful job in general on this. I appreciate all your hard work, Evan.
I'm gonna change just one thing. Then
Open
seats
positions for
to
that
be
office.
filled
And
there.
seats to be filled.
To
Okay,
follow the language of the county bylaws.
sure. Good stuff.
Okay, so then to just kind of go through the last little bit is, oh, Mary, go ahead. And Mary, you froze, so I'm gonna go through the.
I also want to thank you for your hard work on this, Evan. And I know, oh dear.
Oh, you're back. Go ahead.
Well, I've got internet connection issues happening. Thanks again for your hard work on this. When possible, though, if these changes that we're voting on can be posted in advance so we can read through them more carefully, that would be appreciated.
I sent them with the agenda and all of the email.
Oh, then my bad. Sorry about that.
Yeah, I want to make sure that you do have them with plenty of time always. And so the last one is, there's a couple of little bizarreness. So I just added in two things for parliamentary challenges, a system for if someone wants to challenge something based on the bylaws, how that would work. Basically, you know, if they challenge, the president makes a ruling, and if they disagree, they can bring it to the floor as a point of order, vote on it. For any parliamentary challenges, so that would be bylaw rules, you know, something doesn't match. And then there is nothing in our bylaws about amending our bylaws. So I wanted to put in a way to amend our bylaws. It would be a 2-meeting process for amendments, which would be, we bring the bylaws, any changes that want to be made to a general meeting. All the amendments would be offered, changed, written up, whatever needs to happen at that first meeting. If a majority agree, 50% plus one agree, it would be sent to a second meeting, which would require 66% plus one in attendance to vote. And I put a minimum of 20% of the total membership to vote on bylaws change. That might be a high number. I was thinking maybe 10.
Fine. No, that's good.
Okay, 20 is good.
Yep.
All right. So those are in totality the bylaws changes I am proposing. Does anyone have any additional comments?
I looked up at the, what Rocky sent us, and there's a definite prohibition against endorsing more than one candidate for office.
Yeah, so it is in the county rules, the county could decharter our club over it, it sounds like, if they wanted to. That would be kind of the most extreme case. They would likely require us to update our bylaws, would be the more likely initial case. But since we have been warned by someone on the county, I think it's best that we, work within the rules that are proposed to us. You know, this is a democracy. If people do not want me to make that change, I won't make that change. I will go back to it. But I think that it's prudent for the club's health for us to make
Yes.
that change.
Safe and prudent.
Agreed.
Now I lost where it is, but there it is. So any other discussion on this, on the bylaws change? If there's no other discussion, I would take a motion.
Motion to approve the bylaws as appears on the screen.
Seconded.
Second, I heard from Mary first. So motion by
Mhm.
Ellis, second by Mary. All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed? Any abstentions? All right. Hearing none, we have our updated bylaws. I will bring back the multiple endorsements just as a topic to discuss at the next meeting. We can, and I'll do some more research on it in the interim as well. So with that, very quickly, I know we're past time, but we do need to get the approval of the minutes and the treasurer's report. So Alan, if you'd like to do a quick treasurer's report, and then we'll move to the minutes.
Okay, what I did, since we haven't had regular meetings lately, I just did everything from July until the end of the year. And we had membership dues of $1,795. Credit card fees were $66.46. We had donations of $1,000, which included the Young Democratic Club and the two charities that we talked about, the Afghan and the Hively. Plus, we gave a gift of $50, which was approved for Greg Bonato. We had just some event supplies, $62. Post office box was $113. We had to pay for the summer picnic because we canceled. It was a reservation thing. We had to pay $112. And our website fee was $172.80. Our total expenses were $21.26, which gives us an ending balance of $2,886.03. We have 73 members at the present time, with 44 members yet to renew. Any questions?
Move to accept the treasurer's report.
Second.
All right, motion by Ellis, second by Ron. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? All right. And then if we can have a motion for approval of the minutes. Jackie, do you have anything you need to go over with them? Or if not?
There have been no changes to the minutes. You sent them out both via email as well as in the chat. I have had no updates on those since. So if anybody has any corrections, additions, omissions, speak now, please.
Mr. Picky says, good work as usual.
Thank you. I'll take that.
And make a motion the minutes be approved as presented.
Second.
I heard Alan for the motion and a second from Van. All in favor of approving the minutes? Say
Aye.
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 All opposed? Any abstentions?
I will abstain, Secretary.
All right. Then the motion passes unanimously with one abstention. With that, we're going to count the votes. I will send out an email with our final endorsement for the endorsement process. It is going to be, we are able to endorse multiple people in this race. Still, I'm sticking with the rules that were written at the time of the vote. So if this gets us in trouble with the central committee, we will show them that we have updated our rules at this point. But I do not believe in changing the rules after the die has been cast. So we shall go forward with the vote as it was written in the rules. Additionally, I just want to give a brief moment for anyone who has any, announcements or anything, but otherwise we'll be wrapping up the meeting. And Mary?
Real quick announcement.
Hold
I
on,
sent-
hold that thought for 1 second, Alice. Mary had a question, I think, first.
With regard to the endorsements, I'm thinking it would bring us a few inches closer to what will be our new rules. If we might, and I don't know if we're able to do this, but if we would be able to say that we support the candidate, let's just say all three candidates are endorsed, that we support that candidate with the most votes.
We could, but I'm
I
gonna
can tell you that they're all really, really close, and I would hate to cut somebody off because of a 0.2 or whatever. So I kind of like to scrub it against our database first. Right now, it looks really close to me, but I need to go through, you know, who paid dues and stuff, make sure it's current.
Yeah, and I'm gonna stick with that. We cast the votes under a set of rules, and we are going to stick to the set of rules under which we cast our votes. It will be different for the next meeting. The DA meeting will be.
Was the support part of the original votes? The club support for everybody?
So the club can support everybody. So there is the
Okay,
potential. Potentially, we have endorsed all three. I do not know. I don't know the results. I will get those out tomorrow, hopefully. And then with that, Ellis, you said you had an announcement?
Right. Some of you may have bothered to open this. I sent down an announcement, I believe it was yesterday, that had a PDF file that has all the new districts in Alameda County, Contra Costa County for Assembly, Senate, and Congress, and the supervisorial districts, and what the votes were in the last election for those offices. Also, what the racial breakdown is for the old districts based upon the 2020 census. So this particular PDF, which is 39 pages, really gives you a lay of the land or the playing field politically in Alameda and Contra Costa going into the next election cycle, but also the district lines off for the next 10 years. Hopefully Jackie will be able to put that on the website. We were scrambling last night and put it on a Google Drive that Jackie has, but hopefully it'll go on the website. And I suggest that for your other organizations that you belong to, if they have websites, link to that PDF, because it's going to be useful for all progressive organizations involved in the 2022 election and those to follow. Thank you.
And thank you, Ellis and Jackie, for that good work. That's important stuff. Appreciate it.
And just a heads up, I did add a link to the county vote, you know, to all the raw data. So under our links off of our website, I did include that. So you do have access to all the raw data, as well as Ellis's great analysis from past elections. So I'll find a place for that one, but you do have a link to the raw data off our website right now.
Good stuff.
Excellent. I have a quick announcement, which is our next meeting. We will be doing an endorsement vote for the DA candidates. So we'll have all three of them here together. We've had actually a special opportunity with them to meet each of them individually. And so now we'll get the three of them together. Similar format, be prepared, although now we can only endorse one. So, and then I'm looking to get the sheriff candidates in sometime soon, but that date has not been set. So we should be able to endorse in all of those races in the next couple of months. All right. With that, we went a little over time, but thank you all for joining us. This was an exciting meeting and we got a lot done. So thank you very much. And I wish you all an excellent evening.
Thank you.
Good job, Evan.
Thank
This
you.
was a tough one and you did a really good job.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
Bye.